Well, good to see everyone here. It's nice to be able to walk across the hall from my office and do this presentation. It's great to get in front of you every year to share a little bit about what's going on at the city. I want to take some time first and make sure I introduce Mayor Dexter and Deputy Mayor Brendan Meyer, also present today. And we also have, at our front two tables, we have the complete city leadership team from the city of Port Angeles. So do take the time to meet them. For time's sake, I'm not going to take the time to introduce them individually, but really appreciate them being here and appreciate Mayor Dexter and Deputy Mayor Meyer also being here for this important presentation. So today, what I'm really wanting to talk about is the future of Port Angeles. And I think it's really important that all of you are aware that at the city of Port Angeles, staff every day, city council every day, are thinking about how we build a better future for the city of Port Angeles, for our community. How can we build a better future for our climate? How can we build a safer community? How can we build a community that provides adequate housing for everyone in Port Angeles? And I think those are really important starting points of how we're building this community. It's so important to recognize that all of you, every day, we see as also being part of building that community. The amount of contributions and time that all of you spend making our community a better place, it is so appreciated and so noticeable as far as the great community that we have. So I want to jump in and talk a little bit about City Council. And first, I think it's important, everybody knows City Council volunteers their time to be part of change in Port Angeles. They're giving everything that they can to make this a better place. And this picture is of our entire council. And part of what they have done that is so helpful to myself and to all of city staff is really set a strong strategic direction. So I want to talk a little bit about that strategic direction. If you heard me last year, we talked about the city's strategic plan. We talked about some of the details of it. Ultimately, we have 4 areas of critical importance. And I want to start with housing and homelessness. That's been a topic that we've talked about a lot at the city recently. But when you take a look back at what we've accomplished over recent years, I take pride in the fact that the city of Port Angeles is leading the way in Washington State relative to housing of communities of our size. We have done some amazing things relative to what council has ultimately passed in legislative changes for this city. And ultimately, I believe we have a responsibility to better facilitate housing in this community. And I feel like we're doing exactly that. I think it's important too to share that we're also focused on commercial district enhancement. It's not just about downtown, it's about every commercial district in Port Angeles. We really care about the outcomes for all of those commercial corridors. But we have to recognize that the downtown is the heart of this community, and we need that heart to ultimately thrive, and we need to do everything that we can to support those commercial corridors. Building capacity has been a significant challenge at the city from a resource perspective. We've worked hard on that over the past few years. You've heard me talk about it before. If you look back at this last year, we've actually added 21 new positions at the city. That includes major changes to solid waste, but it's a step to recognize we've got to increase city capacity to actually get the infrastructure improvements done, to make the changes that we need to see happen on the ground. And I want to emphasize council and staff have made those investments, and we're getting there from a capacity perspective. And then finally, most important is the relationships that we have. We wouldn't be successful as a city without all of you and the many great relationships and partnerships that we build with you every day and the different projects that we work on. So I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about city finances. And part of building our future is ensuring that we are fiscally responsible. And Serena Carrizosa, our finance director, does a phenomenal job with that. She is a great steward of the city's purse, and we continue to be in great shape when it comes to finances, and I think that's something to celebrate. When you look at some of the numbers that we've seen, one thing that I'm very grateful for is we've seen some constant dependence or ability to rely on revenues, they have remained constant. While growth may not continue to skyrocket as it has in some previous years, we're seeing some of those revenues quite constant. And I think it's important, particularly on this slide, to share that the revenues the city receives, because of some really smart past action by council, aren't just revenues that all of you pay as local taxpayers. Some examples here are the 0.1% dedicated to affordable housing. That's something that comes through sales tax, where every visitor in this community is paying into that. I think last year we heard Marcia Massey give a great presentation to Chamber of Commerce on what that return on investment is to our community when we have visitors coming in contributing to our sales tax, both in the form of transportation benefit district and affordable housing, 0.1% that we can dedicate to housing all of the individuals in our community. So from a revenue perspective, we're also seeing a constant and dependable revenue in utilities. And to me, it's extremely important that we always state that ratepayers come first relative to utility rates. We want to make sure those rates are affordable to the entire community, and they're examined every year through a COSA process or similar process, looking at rates, making sure everyone can afford utilities in this community. Another part of building our financial future was ensuring that we came out of the pandemic successfully. And you heard me talk last year about many of the ARPA funds that were provided. We have, in 2022, there were a number of additional ARPA provisions, including a contribution to Field Hall, including a contribution to the food bank. And I think it's important to also share, when you look at each of these individual projects, there have been some great things done. If you tour the food bank, there's amazing change out there, and it's one of the best food banks you will ever see if you go out and tour and see the change compared to what we used to have in the past in this community. I'm going to talk more about Field Hall, but I want to emphasize too, contribution to the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship. That's helping our businesses grow in this community, a really meaningful change that ultimately gets businesses started up and illustrates a support system for everybody desiring to be an entrepreneur. Finally, I want to mention from a childcare perspective, we can't afford not to invest in new childcare opportunities, and the YMCA contribution is doing exactly that. It's investing in a new facility that's going to provide new capacity in the existing YMCA location. I want to say too that when it has come to the council allocation of the ARPA funding, they have actually allocated in the most selfless way that we've seen any community do with the ARPA funding. It's about giving that money back to the community, making sure it's out in the community and getting those community needs fulfilled at the end of the day. I think so much so, when you look at the diversity of it, the diversity of ARPA spending from the city of Port Angeles is one that's been celebrated and recognized throughout Washington State. And I just think it's really important that we take the time to recognize the council work there. So capital facilities are really important. We talked about capacity. We want to continue to invest in the necessary infrastructure. We have over $143 million in capital needs right now. That's a lot of need out there, but we're making some good progress. This year, we're going to be investing about $35 million in new infrastructure needs. Important to share that about 96% of that overall need is a transportation-related need. The really cool thing here is we're seeing a lot of our projects go to local contractors or outside contractors that are employing local individuals, and I think that's huge. It's an economic driver, it's creating jobs in our community, and those investments are extremely meaningful. Some important additional budget considerations. So there's been some good investment in code enforcement. We now have 1.5 full-time employees in code enforcement. And thanks to all of you and thanks to the Chamber of Commerce, we also have a full-time downtown resource officer. When you look at additional efforts by the finance department, we've got about $1.3 million in early debt payoff that ultimately will benefit the ratepayers at the end of the day. So in the picture here, you see Jackson Van Dusen of our police department. He's the school resource officer. He does great work with the kids, and just an important nexus to what we fund and help support the community as we're moving forward. And again, building on the fact that we're contributing funds to help with the future of this community. So we've invested additional funds in park security as well as citywide cleanups, and then added some additional areas, including comprehensive plan funding, as well as funding for things like tree canopy assessment throughout the city of Port Angeles. So this is Copper, and Copper's a good friend of ours. We're really appreciative for the hard work Copper does every day. But it's important to talk about, when we're building the future, how are we building Port Angeles as a safer, healthier place? And I want to talk about some of our emergency divisions that are doing exactly that. So this past year, Ken Dubuque, after over 21 years of experience, retired. And I think it's important to recognize Ken for having created the paramedicine program, creating 3 paramedicine positions who are out there on the ground helping individuals out every day. But we now have to celebrate Daryl Sharp, our new fire chief, coming in. And Daryl's done a phenomenal job at leading a very new department and getting things back to where they were from a hiring perspective. And I have to say, I'm really happy to share that we're back fully hired in the fire department, and it hasn't been that way since about 2016. That's a huge feat, and Daryl, thank you for that. So the community paramedicine program is one that is out in this community every day. There are 31 individuals right now that they're helping out as patients and ultimately helping out with supplying them with different needs on a daily basis. The community paramedicine program is also helping individuals, whether they're elderly or low income, provide them with assistance doing applications for public housing, whether it's Section 8 or other housing, where we can assist them to find additional locations to be housed. Right now, we've seen over 748 unique persons assisted by the paramedicine program in the last year, and that's about 2,245 actions that they've actually instituted to help out the individuals out in the community. So I think it's important to share, when it comes to our fire department, they're doing a lot more than a typical fire department of their size. Over 5,000 calls on an annual basis, that's a huge number. And if you look at this, how significant the EMS call number is, it far exceeds all the other call areas or categories. But specifically, when you look at the comparison, a typical fire department of our size would do about 140 calls, whereas we do about 243 calls. A really big difference, and ultimately something that I think we should be very proud of as far as how hard our fire department works. So some of the new team members in the fire department, some of them have been around for a while, but it's important to share they are dedicated to health and safety. So much so that they've established a pilot program to where they're actually investing in new health and safety training, which has turned around and been provided with grant support by labor and industries to help pay for some of the equipment they need. A really cool program, and again, an investment in the future health and safety of this community. Peninsula Communications is our 911 communications division of the city, and ultimately they provide county-wide support for 911 calls. One of our biggest challenges has been hiring in this division, and it continues to be a challenge. We're really grateful to have help from Laurel Black, who has helped us with the creation of some job materials, as well as other local videographers who have helped us create videos to do better recruitment in this category. We've got some good applicants, but we're continuing to search in this category for new individuals. So you'll remember last year, if you saw my presentation, we talked quite a bit, and probably the prior 2 years, we talked about hiring police officers. And I'm really happy to share we're now 100% hired, with one small exception I'll share in a second, in the police department. Being at 100% there is really meaningful. We've got 8 new officers, And that's a big investment for the city. The investment that it takes to train these officers and prepare them for the job, that's a really big deal. The one exception is we still have to sort out the downtown resource officer that's now been authorized by council. So again, in code enforcement, we've hired a full-time code enforcement officer. Previously, we had 3 part-time and ultimately had difficulty keeping those positions filled. But it's great to see our code enforcement division work with all of the other departments on successful code enforcement in the city. So part of building our future in the city manager's office is ensuring that we have the programs and services necessary to provide successful community growth in Port Angeles. And so I'm going to talk about some of those elements. One of the first things that I want to mention is we've just recently updated our new website. We have new site mapping, a lot of new features on the website, so please do check that out if you get an opportunity. And then I want to jump to one of the biggest challenges that we've had that I know so many of you have also had, and that's been hiring. And so if you look back over the last year, the Great Resignation, all of the hiring challenges, it's been a really difficult time. But ultimately, we had over 65 vacancies at the city of Port Angeles, and we've been able to fill 52 of those thanks to the hard work of our Human Resources division. That's a big deal. That's over 20% of our workforce. And it's really difficult to keep up, but we're there, and ultimately we've been able to do a great number of hires over the past year. I want to mention in the picture, we've got a lot of great effort here. You've got Bob Petty, who does all the maintenance, and Vern Burton around City Hall. He's just about to retire after years and years of experience at the city of Port Angeles, and a lot of other great people doing really hard work out in the community. So next I want to talk about our new assistant city manager, Calvin Goings. I did introduce him at the last chamber meeting. I hope you all get an opportunity to meet him. But Calvin has a great deal of experience in municipal government coming from the city of Seattle. To me, what is most important is he is here to improve your customer service experience, to really grow that, to expand it and make it better for all of you, but also to make it better for all of the community services that we provide, everything from development permitting to the day-to-day interaction that you might have over the phone. So I want to talk more about some of our community services and really looking at how we build for the future. And community services is an area that's extremely important to us right now because it ties in some of the housing needs. So right now, if you look at building permits, we've actually seen some pretty good growth in building permits. Although our numbers are down from last year, the value's up pretty significantly from last year. I think it's important to share too, we saw 43 new housing units built, although 53 last year, so we're seeing that slow down. I think that has a lot to do with interest rates and some other factors out in the market. Additionally, we have 11 residential units that are currently pending and 41 that have been approved and are ready to move forward in the year 2023. So downtown development is another really important component of what is happening in this community that's part of building our future. And I'm really excited about all 3 of these projects. I think part of what I'm excited about is perhaps next year, we may be in a new Red Lion facility when I give this presentation. The Red Lion is the middle picture here. I think it's important to share that the Lower Awa Hotel is continuing to move forward, and they're in the final stages of a building permit process. That's a big deal. They've done a lot of the other permitting steps, and it's a great place to be. Field Hall is one I want to talk about because to me that's extremely meaningful, and I will tell you that I intend to celebrate the day Field Hall opens. And the reason why is I have worked on no less than 4 different projects on that Oak Street site. And ultimately, the vision of Donna Morris and Dorothy Field really helped us see this to completion. And I'm so excited that we're going to be seeing it completed this year. That's a big deal when you look at all the challenges we've seen on that site in the past. It's really exciting. So some downtown investment that we continue to make. I think all of you are probably familiar with our facade improvement program. If not, please do check it out. But we had some good facade improvements this past year. And this is Skincare Suites, a business that moved and relocated, but also took the time to reinvest in the facade. And then we also saw Peninsula Housing Authority come in and invest in the Lee Plaza Hotel. So lots of good things happening in downtown. And next I want to shift over to pursuing housing for all. This is a really important topic to us. It was part of our council conversation last night. We have an ordinance underway. The first reading of that ordinance was last night, and we're anticipating council adoption on the 21st of March. So really excited about what's happening here. I hope all of you have had an opportunity to participate in some of those public meetings and engagement sessions. So climate resiliency is a priority for City Council and for all of us. And I think it's so important that we all care about the environment in which probably helped us choose to locate here permanently from the very beginning. We care about that environment, and therefore we want to focus closely on the future and relative to climate resiliency. And I think the City of Port Angeles has done a great job with that. We have built a climate resiliency plan, which was approved by Council last year, as well as a climate implementation plan, also approved last year. So lodging tax funds are something that many of you are familiar with as well. Ultimately, those are contributed to the various events in the community, but we continue to see record growth there. This is, with the exception of 2020 due to the pandemic, this is the 9th consecutive year of growth. And I can remember, it doesn't feel that long ago that we thought 500,000 in that fund was a really big number, and now we're at 1.14 million. It's a big deal to see those changes, to see our tourism economy thrive in this community. And again, that comes back to building our future and the investment that those visitors are making through those tourist experiences in our roadways through the Transportation Benefit District and in our housing through the 0.1% sales tax. So Ray Street improvements, I hope many of you will remember the original Ray Street concept that came out of the Waterfront Transportation Improvement Plan. The goal of that project was create connectivity between the Olympic Discovery Trail and Olympic National Park. And we just saw this project start approximately 2 weeks ago, and ultimately we're so excited. This project is predominantly grant funded, about 4.9 million in grant funds. A really big deal to see that come to fruition. And I can't say enough to just be grateful and appreciative of the hard work the National Park Service did to support us in many of those grant applications. It's really cool to see this project underway. Even more cool than that, when you look at the team that is actually doing the construction on the ground, they're all local. It may not be a local business, but they are working to have a Port Angeles office, and they are people that we know because they've worked on so many other projects here in our community and they live here. So Public Works and Utilities, when it comes to them helping to build the future of this community, that's really about connectivity, building future connectivity, building future infrastructure for the entire community. And we've got a lot of good projects underway. I'm gonna provide just a few examples here. The N Street outfall last year was probably not something on our radar very long, but we had some stormwater outflow issues, and ultimately we had some free flow coming off the end of N Street. Well, our team was able to turn that around quite quickly. We now have infrastructure that actually contains that stormwater, prevents erosion from occurring, and that project is now complete. We're really excited to have that fixed. A really important one to our future and eligibility for grant funding. I want to say in 2019, City Council passed an ordinance which actually supported multimodal transportation for the benefit of getting recognition from the Transportation Improvement Board. Part of that ordinance and part of the relationship with the Transportation Improvement Board required that we do a demonstration project. And this Francis Street project, ADA improvements, it was actually our example project, and it makes us eligible to receive so much more in grant funding relative to many other projects that support multimodal transportation through all of our transportation needs. Really important one for the connectivity of the Discovery Trail, connecting up through our commercial corridor. So neighborhood sewer rehabilitation is extremely important. Our infrastructure is aging. It's something that we need to focus on. And every single year in our capital facility plan through 2028, we have a different neighborhood sewer enhancement project, which will enhance sewer capacity as well as fix old infrastructure. I think that's a big deal. We've invested additional staff support in making sure that these neighborhood projects continue to happen, as well as quite a bit of capital dollars to ensure the projects move forward. So our legal department really looks at making sure that we have support for every single department in the city as we move forward, and really they are behind us in helping support the future of this community. So one of the things that they have focused on a lot over the last year is compliance, ensuring that the police department is getting support when it comes to code compliance. They also do a great deal of help with property management for the city of Port Angeles. This year, one of the biggest projects that was accomplished through the coordination between legal and the police department was a house on Valley Street that was a real challenge for us enforcement-wise. Ultimately, the legal department filed lawsuit details, and that ended up in us getting compliance at the end of the day. And you'll see the before and afters, both in this picture and in this next shot, where we had some really challenging occurrences on the ground there in Valley Street. It's one of many code enforcement challenges that we have, and every step of the way, our legal department is helping us resolve some of those challenges. So solid waste transition is another area where the legal department really helped, and I'm happy to say that ultimately we were successful in the last 2 weeks of getting a settlement agreement with Waste Connections. It's a good thing to be able to be in the position of the city controlling the rates that are ultimately going to determine how much all of you pay throughout Clallam County relative to solid waste when you bring something to the transfer station. It's really important that first and foremost, as we had that pending litigation, we were thinking about all of you and ultimately the rates, trying to ensure we could keep those rates at a reasonable price. So Parks and Recreation is one that is really building those future recreational opportunities throughout our community. And this one's really fun. When you look at some of the projects within this area, I think it's so important to share. So many of these projects couldn't be done without all of you. You know, every project, pretty much every project, there's a couple here in between that won't have partnership, but all of them relate to community assistance and how others have stepped up to make these successful. The pump track is a great example, and I can tell you, my family has greatly enjoyed this pump track. I can tell you, I have the privilege of riding in my bike during the summer and early Friday mornings before anyone's out there. Since it's been so packed, I get the privilege of riding the pump track before anybody's there. Lots of fun, and I'm so grateful for everyone in the community who made that happen and made that a reality. We could not have done it alone. So 24-hour restrooms, we're excited about these. I think many of you who have been around a while, we've heard a lot about concerns of how to access restrooms in the downtown area. These are for our residents, for our visitors, for everyone. And we now have 3 new restrooms in the downtown that are installed and ultimately complete. So we're excited to have these there. Additionally, City Pier railing. This is long needed, a good investment, and we're so happy that this is under construction right now today, getting new railings put in place to really enhance City Pier. So back to that community partnership and community support and help, we had a very generous individual contribute $100,000 that ultimately made the resurfacing of Volunteer Field possible. It helped us obtain other grants. It helped this project move forward, and we're just so excited to see a community member step up and make that kind of contribution. In a similar way, we've seen others contribute. The Peninsula Tennis Club has contributed $10,000 to help with enhancements that probably the city couldn't have done alone without that contribution to help make enhancements to our tennis courts. And the same thing again, a $30,000 contribution was made to help enhance the pickleball courts, which is also going to be something that we're doing in the near future. So I'm going to shift gears a bit because I really want to talk about what's new and on the horizon. And I think I want to really capture all the great things that have happened since I gave my presentation to all of you last year. So a lot of these are 2022, a lot of them are 2023, but there's some big ones on here. I think one that I'd like to start out with, particularly in recognition of Edna and her well-deserved award, but you may remember Apria Healthcare, you may remember Fanaticus, you may remember Edna's Place. It is great to have a new clinic in this location, and North Olympic Healthcare Network, they care greatly about our community. They've demonstrated that through contributions to our paramedicine program and elsewhere. We couldn't be happier to see them open this location that's been shut down for a while. Similarly, we saw Angelus Millworks come in and they are preparing permits for Angelus Rentals coming in on Lincoln Street. So pretty seamless relative to the closure of Sears. It's great to see them stepping up and see some continuity in that storefront location. Really excited about that. It's great to see Harbinger Winery actually open a second establishment here right near downtown so people can access and walk to it. To see Dawnview Court, which is Peninsula Behavioral Health's all-view motel conversion. That's going to be opening in April. We couldn't be more excited to see that. There's a lot of other ones on this list, but we're so excited to see some of these investments. I can't not mention Moss, just recognizing that Maurice's was long ago, and that building has sat vacant for a really long time. That's something we should celebrate, to see that turned around in a local business. And what I love about all of these is it has all of our local creativity and diversity. It's not just your standard chain stores. We're seeing diversity in this community that surpasses so many other communities throughout Washington State and throughout the nation. So something to be very excited about. So I want to thank all of you for your continued effort to work together. There's many things that have been done. The fact that Column Transit stepped up, the Chamber of Commerce stepped up as part of Elevate Port Angeles to recognize the need in a downtown resource officer to provide matching funds and for our local businesses to contribute funds to help out with that officer position. That was huge, and I want to say thank you for that. I want to thank Lincoln Park BMX and all the others who helped support the pump track and making that a success. That is such an amazing feature to have in our community. And it's a great thing to see the continued vibrancy in the wintertime and hopefully in some other seasons with the ice skating rink, which is done entirely by all of you as volunteers for that rink. A really cool thing to see in this community. So I want to make sure all of us commit to keeping this momentum going. We can do that by continuing to engage and elevate Port Angeles. Let's all engage in the Big Spring Spruce Up that happens on May 6th of this year. It was a great event last year. Let's keep that up. And then finally, I want to talk about all of you and all of us collectively building this community together. Because I can tell you every day, staff is thinking about how we can make this community a better place. And so literally all of you, staff, city council, we're authoring what Port Angeles looks like in the future. And that really matters, that we're all contributing to that long-term effort, that we're building a healthier community, that we're building a safer community, that we're taking the time to ensure we get the housing that we need constructed in this community. We're striving to build a better future. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. So thank you all very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Nathan. On the note of Elevate Port Angeles, I just want to mention that we do meet on the last Monday of each month, and we are in need of volunteers. We have a lot of great minds in this community. We'd love to see more community engagement because we have a lot of momentum, but more to come. And Nathan, thank you for an excellent presentation today. We do have some time for questions, and so I'm happy to run around the building here. I see one in the back, and I'll get started.
Thank you for a great presentation, Nathan. My question is about challenges coming up in the next years with road and street closures, the effect you see on Port Angeles, and what local business organizations may be able to do together with the city to try to steer things in a way that is least damaging to our business activity. I'm talking about 101, Ennis Creek, Lincoln Street closure, which might be a few years in the future, but it looks like it might actually happen for longer than just a couple of days. What can you tell us, what we know about it, and how can we work with the Chamber, Business Association, maybe NOLA, to try to steer the powers that be in a way that they cause least damage?
Thank you, Kai. I think that's a really important issue. You may remember I brought that up as a challenge last year in my presentation, and I think it's really important that we all continue to maintain focus on what's going on there. Some of the timeframes have changed, and they'll likely continue to change. But we've had some good organizational focus on the issue. I know the county commissioners have been really proactive about looking ahead at that issue. I believe there might even be a meeting where they get a presentation next week on that particular subject. In addition to that, we've had Peninsula Tourism Commission really engage on that issue, try to create some solutions there. But it will make a difference. It will be a challenging time for us, particularly in 2024, I think, with both the Ennis and Lees Creek projects, seeing those move forward. I think that those will be a difficult time just knowing the way traffic functions in our community. And what is really important is we're gonna have to work as a community to create some solutions there. I'm confident we can. I think back certainly to 2009 when this community came together and painted 43 buildings in our downtown during the Hood Canal Bridge closure. That was a big deal. And I think something similar is what we need to do. We need to take up some solutions collectively as a community and make a plan.
Other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Nathan, for an excellent presentation.
Thanks, everyone.